introductions and a brief comment from the chair. My name is Nick Neptune. I'm the chair of the City of Raleigh Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission. And before we proceed with further introductions with my colleague to my left here, Vice Chair Caruso, I do want to brief. The Advisory Commission is an all-volunteer City Council appointed commission that primarily serves to advise, as it is stated in its title, to advise our colleagues on city staff, as well as our colleagues on city council, with regard to our growth and development across the city and how we integrate active transportation infrastructure in said growth. With that, I'd like to proceed with introductions with Vice Chair Caruso.
Joe Caruso, Vice Chair and Chair of the Policy Committee.
Jeronica Goodwin, part of the Planning Committee.
Brian Thomas, Outreach and Engagement Committee.
Alex Rittenberry, I'm on the Policy Committee.
I'm Elizabeth Alley on the Policy Committee.
Mary Jo Gallenbeck on the Planning Committee.
Will Shoemaker, Mobility Development Supervisor.
Barbara Godwin, Bike and Pedestrian Program Manager.
Ms. Clark?
Oh, Beverly Clark, Chair of the Parks, Recreation, and Greenway Advisory Board.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for making your introductions. As I noted during my prelude comment, we're going to move past the approval of the minutes while we anticipate the arrival of a colleague or two on the commissions that we have quorum and can officially take vote. With that noted, we will now proceed with public comment. Do we have anyone here to make public comment? If so, please proceed. You will have 3 minutes to make a brief statement. If you'll introduce yourself, your name, and perhaps your address, and take a moment to share your comment.
Hi, I'm Alex Brissett. I live at 1109 Brookside Drive. My wife and I picked this as our wedding anniversary date night. So we live on Brookside Drive, as I mentioned. We got a letter recently from the city that they want to install, or they want to convert the street to parking on both sides of the street. You guys are I think you've heard this issue already, but I just want to make sure that it kind of stays on the radars. So I wanted to comment that the street really needs bike lanes. I think it's on the plan to add bike lanes, and it needs them because it will, I think, help, protected bike lanes at least should help mitigate the speeding and traffic problems that we have on the street, make it much safer. And there's a school on it. Lots of families use it to move around, go to and from schools with kids on their bikes. We see them all the time. But the city is proposing to convert it to parking in the near term with the 5-year plan, I guess, to put the bike lanes down. And my concern is that once the parking goes in, it'll never come out. There doesn't need to be parking. Everybody has a private driveway. There's garages. There's plenty of private parking. So there's not that much use for on-street parking. But, you know, my wife and I, we've been involved in putting bike lanes down before. I'm sure many of you know that it turns into a fierce fight to take away parking once it's there. So I hope there's a way that we can, push to accelerate the timeline to put down bike lanes, reprioritize things so that we don't have to have that fight in the future, so that we can, get the safe accommodations that we need, rather than putting down parking, which doesn't really solve any problems.
Thank you. Was it Mr. Burnett?
Brissett.
Brissett. Well, first of all,
can I spell that?
Well, you're welcome to. Please, B-R...
B-R-I-S-S-E-T-T-E.
Mr. Brissett,
yeah.
Thank you, number one, for being here tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. To take a date night, to spend it in advocating on behalf of your neighborhood.
We could think of no better way.
Well, I hope to be so lucky one day, my friend, number one. Number two, I really do mean this. I think that the commission deeply appreciates you, your partner, joining us this evening in advocacy for active transportation in your neighborhood. as you can imagine, your comment is being heard by quite receptive ears. Okay, and in fact, I do believe we have a resident of said neighborhood, or at least nearby, who actually serves in the commission. So, rest assured that we hear you loudly and clearly. We have, in fact, been engaged in this conversation with city staff and a number of your neighbors since June of this year. And again, as this should come as no surprise, I think the commission, too, would prefer to see the advancement of active transportation infrastructure over parking in the near term. Okay, in the immediate term. We should be building out and investing in the infrastructure that we want to see result in more modes of modality, right? More options for people in terms of how they choose to get around. But, that's me being a broken record on the topic. Any thoughts, responses, comments from the commission?
Of course. Alex, thank you for coming down. We really appreciate having another voice to express the concern for the arguments between on-street parking and space for active transportation. I wanted you to know that this exact argument has been brought up in the planning committee as well as here at our monthly meeting. So to have unsolicited response is really appreciated. I do hope that we do take this concern strongly. I do feel that putting the parking in immediately won't resolve any of the concerns that are being asked. And I want to stress also that one of the concerns is for that new multi-unit residency that's going to go up on that street. The residents who will be moving in will be more likely to choose active transportation if the infrastructure is there. If the infrastructure is there for motor vehicle, they're more likely to choose that. So we really have to be thoughtful, I think, instead of just plowing through and putting down the parking, which we know is a contentious topic, to reconsider. So thank you so much for coming.
Ms. Gallenbeck, thank you for your comment. I'd like to, number one, echo everything that you've just said. I'd also like to acknowledge that my very first meeting this morning was at 8:30 a.m. at the Optimist Coffee Shop with a couple of neighbors of our friend Mr. Brissett, in addition to the executive director of Oaks and Spokes, Jared Harbor. And I anticipate that our friends with Oaks and Spokes and your neighbors and colleagues along Brookside will be actively organizing with each other to see the advancement of this infrastructure that we'd all like to see. So, any further comment from the commission?
Just one
Yes.
note to echo this again. I am your neighbor. I live over by the park, and my kids go to Con, and I am on the wellness committee, and we're having a bike to school event just because we bike to school, right? On Friday there's some special event at school, and they want people to decorate bikes. The best place for us to meet was going to be the Oakwood Dog Park, right? You could park them up, and we had to nix it because there is no safe way to bike the 2 blocks with a bunch of children to their school, and they all live in the walk zone. Like, they are 10 and under. They don't drive. They have no way safely on a bike on that street to get to their school. So, I mean, I think a compromise where we have a bike lane on the school side and a parking lane on the other side could both ameliorate the issues with construction traffic and get people a safe route to school and work and beyond. So I think it's really, I support our staff. I think it's just finding the nimbleness to be able to put that thermoplastic down in a different way. So thank you for your advocacy. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further comment? Hearing none, let us proceed with our presentations. We have here our Vision Zero program update from our friend and colleague, Mr. Driscoll. Always good to see Mr. Sean Driscoll here at the commission table.
Always.
Thank you. All right, thank you for having me. Good evening, BPAC. Again, my name is Sean Driscoll. I'm the Vision Zero Program Manager here at the City of Raleigh, and we will jump right into this. So this is the agenda for the presentation. I'll again define Vision Zero, highlight our team and responsibilities that we have, go over some of the improvement projects we're working on and we're planning for, some of the accomplishments we've made, how this is a fundamentally different way to approach traffic safety, and then go over some next steps we have in the future. So what is Vision Zero? So Vision Zero is the goal to reduce and eliminate serious injuries and fatalities along our transportation network. The network includes bike, pedestrian, cars, bus, motorcycles, scooters, while increasing safe, health, and equitable mobility for all. These are our Vision Zero guiding principles. This was modified slightly, but taken almost exclusively from the Federal Highway Administration. Safety is everyone's responsibility. This is arguably one of the more challenging aspects of Vision Zero, is addressing the behavioral element. Traffic deaths are preventable and unacceptable. Protecting lives takes priority over all other transportation objectives, regardless of inconvenience. Transportation systems should be designed so mistakes are not fatal. As an engineer, that's one I'm harping on. And solutions must be collaborative, equitable, and data-driven. This is our team here. So Jed is my boss. He's a city traffic engineer. Myself, two other engineers. We hired Shane about 6 months ago. He's a superstar. And then Dustin Bryce is our streetlight program administrator. But also want to highlight, we don't work in a silo. We have lots of external and internal partners. So internally, work heavily with RPD and fire, BPAC, development services, and ensuring that there are safety improvement projects going in as developments go underway. Engineering services, roadway design and construction delivers a lot of our roadway improvement projects, our CIP and our bond projects. We install hawks for Parks and Rec. We work with the sign and signal shop making improvements. I feel like we got our hand in everything. So we also, Wake County Public Schools, ITRI, NC State, Governor Highway Association, we're regularly in contact with them, collaborating on improvements. So the Vision Zero, so my program responsibilities is kind of 3 large sections. So general safety improvements, this is both city and NCDOT roadways. So we initiate and help with signal studies, speed studies, and put together crash diagrams for intersections, looking for trends. We recommend mitigating measures and projects to improve safety, correct crash patterns, and help vulnerable users. And I'll talk a little bit more, but we have lots of tactical projects that we're moving forward with as well. We manage all the school zones and school areas, so within the Raleigh city limits for Wake County Public Schools, all the roadways kind of directly off campus as vehicles exit campus, improvements around schools, which I'll talk about more. And then we work with the neighborhood traffic management program quite a bit, lowering speed limits, especially schools within neighborhoods, and combining traffic calming projects with safety improvement projects that my group is developing as well. And we have our streetlight program as well, so I'll touch on that too. So to go into more detail, we work with NCDOT very closely in identifying areas of concern and develop improvement projects. So since around this time last year, we've partnered with NCDOT, and they have funded 8 spot safety improvement projects totaling to $2.4 million. I want to highlight some of those here. So Even May at New Hope, $900,000, installation of traffic signal and construction of left turn lanes. Cole at Glenwood and Wade, installation, or $384,000, installation of turn lanes with associated traffic signal improvements. Person at Polk, installation of a traffic signal. Fidelity at Gulf and Westgate, installation of a traffic signal. Trinity at Edwards Mill, traffic signal modifications to include PED improvements. Glenwood at Blue Ridge and Lead Mine, traffic signal modifications to include PED accommodation. South Saunders at I-440, traffic signal and sidewalk ramp modifications to provide signalization for pedestrian routes along the north-south. Capitol at the Fairview Underpass and Buffalo Road at Tally Ho, those are guardrail improvements. And we also have, we just recently awarded a guardrail design to Kimley Horn for guardrail at Crabtree View and Blue Ridge. So lots going on. Those are just the funded projects that NCDOT has been able to competitively get for us, and they will manage those design and construction projects. And then it's worth noting, we have a lot of projects that we have submitted to them that are still competitively being scored. Just recently, we submitted over $1 million in projects. This includes Fall of Neuse at Newton, Fall of Neuse at North Bend, Poole, Samuel, and Williams. And I'll touch on it more, but signalizing the intersection for Harris Creek Elementary and Dillard Middle School. Okay, and so moving on, the signalized intersections here, these are intersections that the city of Raleigh has managed the design and construction for. These three, Hillsborough Park is done, Atlantic at Atlantic Springs and Industrial will be completed likely in the next few weeks. We're gonna put down the final pavement markings and the signal will go into flash, and then a week later, the signal will be fully functional. We have 7 locations where we are designing or gearing up for construction for signalized intersections. I'll touch on the schools more, but Poplar Highwood is going to be delivered by our partners at Engineering Services. And then Glenwood, Washington, and Lane, and then Gorman, Jackson, Wolfway were all intersections specifically called out in this last fiscal year's budget. We've also worked with NCDOT, kind of similar to all those projects that I've listed out to you, like examples of some that are completed: Pinecrest at Country Trail, and then South Saunders at Prospect. Those are signalized intersections that we've collaborated with NCDOT in the past, identifying the deficiency, putting together cost estimates for them, and then actively pursuing funding. So some other general safety improvements. We're installing flexible delineators at Jones and McDowell and Davie at McDowell, also at Capitol and Calvary. The point of these around the intersections, which I'll show some pictures of. I know you guys just saw Hargett and Salisbury too. As these delineators around the radii tighten it up for the vehicles, so those vehicles making those right turns have to make it slower. It also brings more visibility to the pedestrian, and it shortens the crosswalk. So it's an example of kind of a tactical improvement, low cost, high impact that we want to move forward with as much as we can. Capitol and Calvary in particular is one of our troublesome intersections. We had 59 fatalities last year total. This year we're up to 24, which is a little bit of an improvement. 8 of those were pedestrians. 4 of those pedestrians were on Capitol Boulevard. And of those 4, all of them were basically within a stone's throw of Capitol and Calvary. So this is a location we're really focusing on. We currently, in partnership with Transit, have a design that we've awarded to Ramey Kemp for traffic and pedestrian improvements. So things we're going to do there, as an example, we're going to relocate the existing stops closer to the intersection, upgrade the signal design to make it more ped-friendly, align and shorten pedestrian crosswalk lengths, add reflective backplates so all signal heads, add median refuges on both sides of the intersection to shorten those, that Capitol crossing. We, within the last month, installed LPIs, which are the leading pedestrian intervals. And then earlier this year, we did complete a streetlight improvement project around that intersection. But just recently, Duke, with their subconsultant Pike, has completed more of a corridor design for us from the Lewisburg split up to Millbrook, I believe, to bring more streetlights kind of to and from the intersection. So we've installed quite a few RFBs are in the process. A couple that you might have seen is the ones on Wilmington Street at OEP, which is the picture you see here. This one has concrete within the roadway as well to ensure traffic's not parking too close to the intersection. You see our push buttons there as well. We do have intentions on installing them at Blunt Street at Go Raleigh Station. That's in the works. And then we're installing 2 at Person and Bragg and Blunt and Bragg. We're working with street maintenance on getting the ramps installed for those, and then those will be installed. Those two locations are also part of the two-way conversion project and will inevitably be signalized intersections there within the South Park area. Leading pedestrian intervals, we've installed them at another number of locations over the last year. Again, LPIs give the pedestrian the walk sign before the parallel moving traffic with you turns green. So instead of this looking at each other, wondering who's going first situation, you should have already established yourself in the roadway, in the crosswalk, making yourself more visible. It should decrease crashes with pedestrians. Our downtown PED Phase 1 project is complete. That lowered speed limits to the downtown core to 25, installed LPIs at over 100 intersections, installed no right-on reds, and reduced channelization of left turn lanes. We have pretty much finalized our scope of downtown PED Phase 2. That's going to address the 20-plus mid-block crossings we have downtown. So there's an array of recommendations from Hawks to RFBs, as well as a number of raised crosswalks we're really psyched about, hoping to get those funded and installed. So I'll keep you updated on that, but we're going to pursue funding through NCDOT, likely federal funding at the end of the year to move that one forward. We have installed high visibility backplates at 16 intersections with red light running crash trends. We have installed accessible pedestrian signals at 13 intersections. We have 12 more in pre-construction. Council allocated $150,000 to the fiscal year 23 budget to install strictly APSs. We're hoping to get that every year from them. And just to put into context, it's around $10,000 to $13,000 per intersection. But it's NCDOT and the city's goal to ensure we have APS at all intersections around the city. DOT is installing a couple Hawks. I just wanted to make sure I mentioned this is north of Centennial View Lane. This is exiting a transit stop, and then north of Brigadoon Drive, exiting a transit stop as well. And then one last thing I wanted to touch on, which we're also really excited about, is we've been having this really hard push to create criteria, establish criteria to allow us to change signalized intersections from permissive left turns to protected left turns. So permissive is like the flashing yellow arrow if you just have the green ball and you're yielding to traffic. So as an example, if it's 3 or more lanes, if the average daily traffic is more than 25,000 vehicles per day, if the posted speed is 45, if there's a crash history at the intersection, we no longer see a need to give the citizen the option to make that permissive left turn. It's clearly not safe. So we have already changed 10 intersections from permissive to straight protected left turns. This has made a humongous impact already on the crashes that we've seen. There hasn't been fatalities at these intersections. Serious injuries from crashes has gone down. I could dive into some serious detail on this, but there's quite a bit that goes into it. You have to have a 4-section head, or you have to have a bimodal head that has this ability to have a protected left turn. There's probably 50 or so plus intersections we've identified. If we stretch our criteria, it might be more like 80. But we have 10 that are completed and 10 more we're working on. But this was a big undertaking on our end, working with our traffic control center and the engineers there. Adjusting signal designs, monitoring impacts that these have. We can, how do I put it? Once we implement something like this, we have to track it to make sure it's working so there aren't serious repercussions. So the Traffic Control Center has cameras at lots of intersections. They're able to make signal timing adjustments and can reiterate to us whether this can be set in place or not. So some of these are 24/7. Most of them aren't. Most of them are all day or specific times of day where crash trends seem to happen. So that's a big undertaking, and we're looking to move forward with that more and more because it's not really money out of our pocket other than just a lot of work, and it has a humongous impact. These are two improvement projects just wanted to highlight. So Hillsborough Park, that's a signalized intersection through there, so you can see the full gamut. LPIs, APSs, ADA ramps, signal heads. That one just got done. And then to the right, Salisbury at Hargett Street. So this first was a traffic safety project, like the one at Capitol Calvary and some of the other ones I mentioned, installing flexible delineators around the radii to tighten the radius and shorten the crosswalks. That just becomes kind of a dead area, dead space, and sometimes we hash it out. This was a great opportunity to install art outside a general use lane, not in a crosswalk, within an area that was already voided for no parking. It's very visible. I think it's already going over very well, but this is something that we'd like to do at more locations around the city. This is a little tweaking involved with this one. We have delineators up more since this picture, but there is a fixed route bus that turns off Salisbury to Hargett that's hit a couple. So we're working with all vehicles to make sure that those are installed as best we can. So we'll talk about school zones now. So we installed our standardized school zone or school area signage at 33 locations. Just quickly, a school zone is any area in which we have to lower the speed limit by 10 miles per hour. That's a school zone. A school area is where the posted speed is already 25 miles per hour. We have two different sets of standard details for that. It's different criteria that need to be met. We installed 27 ramps at like 8 different schools, ADA ramp upgrades. This was done through the flat work contract that street maintenance manages every year. You will continue to see ADA ramp upgrades from me like that. This is at least $100,000 of improvements we'll do every year, and I'm going to try to focus the best I can around schools. We completed an Oberlin Middle Pedestrian Refuge project, which I'll show you some pictures here in a minute. The signalized intersections we're working on, so River Bend Elementary, the design is done. We look to start construction early next year on that. Wakefield Middle and Wakefield High School are currently in real estate acquisition for the next 3 months or so. So hopefully by next spring, that one should start construction. All of those projects will have a 1-year construction period, and that's almost entirely due to the lead time for strain poles and mast arms right now. So we have to be cognizant of that. RFBs, I mentioned a few locations, but wanted to highlight the schools here. So at Dillard, like you saw on the first picture starting the presentation, got RFBs and some delineators at their crosswalk at Dillard Middle because the kids were crossing 5 or 6 lanes of traffic, and those have already had a humongous impact. So hopefully we can get Dillard funded for full signalization. But then, Wakefield was so rough, we went ahead and already installed RFBs out there as an interim countermeasure in anticipation of signalization. And then another one I wanted to highlight is Wildwood Forest elementary improvements. Those should start next year somewhat and simultaneously with the traffic calming project that the NTMP program manages. This is going to include 2 multi-way stop conversions. I know of at least 1 traffic circle, traffic calming, speed humps out there. It does include sidewalk extensions on both sides of the school. And then, of course, ADA ramp and pavement marking upgrades with all those flat work improvements. This is the intersection of Glenwood, St. Mary's, and Anderson. Those kids go to Oberlin Middle, and rightfully, it's good, it's safe. The school lets them out kind of as a group. I call them herds. They're so big sometimes. It's better than just kind of nickel and diming the kids out. They're going together. The problem with that is a couple things we noticed. Sometimes none of the kids push the push button, despite as many of them that are there. And we see issues like that. It doesn't matter how old you are. We have compliance issues with people using the push buttons for, RFBs, hawk, signalized intersections. So all these, this is 2 signals here. I don't want to bore you guys with technical details, but these kids have to sit halfway through at this refuge before the ped call gets hit so they can cross St. Mary's, I believe. As you can see in this picture, it's extremely dangerous. So that was like one of the big things we did earlier this year is we worked with street maintenance and got a design completed. They got a contractor out there, and we were able to widen that refuge as much as we possibly could, put up some curb and gutter there, and then put in ADA ramps. So lots of, observing in the field, looking for real-time behaviors, seeing what happens, and then trying to make accommodations for which we define as vulnerable users or, children around schools. Our streetlight program, so streetlights, underestimated impact, a lot of times overlooked. Streetlights can reduce nighttime injury for pedestrian crashes at intersections by 42%. That's a lot. Lighting along streets and crosswalks more clearly illuminates areas of pedestrian activity, increases motorist visibility, and improves nighttime pedestrian security. So the city leases approximately 35,000 lights from Duke every year. We pay the bill of about $5.5 million a year, just to kind of put that in context. We kind of take on hundreds of streetlights every year. As developments are completed, CIP and bond projects are completed, as well as citizen requests as we make improvements. The city of Raleigh does own and maintain about 150 streetlights. Most of those are along Hillsborough Street that were done as part of like the phase 1 and 2 project out there by NC State. We also had a project a few years back where we installed underpass lighting at a number of locations. So there's always been a maintenance and repair need for the city of Raleigh owned infrastructure. So recently we were able to award a maintenance and repair contract to 2 different contractors I listed there. That will give us more of a direct contact to get those street light repairs made as quickly as possible because it is a safety concern. Sometimes they're pretty serious, so really psyched about that. That makes mine and Dustin's life a lot easier. And then we have street light improvements at some of the schools and other locations I've listed here. Lately we've been, again, focusing around schools, Capitol Calvary, Capitol Millbrook, the downtown core, and Glenwood South. This map you see here, we have a GIS layer. We have all of our streetlights, both Duke and ours, but we make note of improvements that we're making, throughout the year. So, we share things like this map with the Downtown Raleigh Alliance. So they have a good understanding of the improvements we're making in a place like Glenwood South. Okay. So our SS4A Comprehensive Safety Action Plan, as you guys probably know, it's a $1 million project that got funded earlier this year. FHWA executed the grant agreement upon council approval on July 25th. We will advertise the RFQ for a consultant later this month, and by the end of this year, we are looking to have a consultant on board under contract with council approval. The plan will take 18 to 24 months to complete and adopted by the city. And then as part of the plan, I'll have a number of recommendations, but then we are allowed to move forward with applying for up to $30 million of implementation funding through FHWA. Implementation funding is design and construction funding. And then our goal is to apply for that funding in September of 25. So the primary plan elements will include a vision and a mission, goal and objectives, data-driven safety systems-based approach focusing on the underlying and interconnected factors driving road safety problems, specifically within our historically transportation disadvantaged communities. There'll be a commitment to an equitable and data-driven approach to Vision Zero, development of a multidisciplinary task force, comprehensive data and safety analysis, identification of traffic safety concerns, recommendations for safety countermeasures, extensive public and stakeholder engagement, including education and awareness initiatives, policy and legislative recommendations, and then evaluation and monitoring framework. Okay, so how do we get to Vision Zero? So safety projects and the Vision Zero needs to be the foundation for all of our programs and departments we have within our transportation department. So that needs to be the first thing on your mind as we make improvements to projects, as we make recommendations. And so I won't read all these over here, but these are a number of bullets of things we try to keep in mind to achieve our Vision Zero goals. Again, this is a fundamentally different way to approach traffic safety, and solutions must be collaborative, equitable, and data-driven. And to do this, we have to have partnerships and collaboration, both internally and amongst other government agencies and community stakeholders, and focus transportation improvement projects on our high-injury network and our historically disadvantaged communities. So in summary, what we've accomplished, so our NCDOT funded almost $2.5 million of projects that we helped identify. We've improved signage at 33 schools. We completed Downtown PED Phase 1. We developed a Vision Zero program webpage. This is also huge. I should have put it in all bold, but we worked with our communications department extensively over the last 4, 5, 6 months developing the webpage. We even recently updated it based on things we've accomplished, what we're working on now, kind of in anticipation of this presentation and future presentations. So please visit the webpage. Lots of streetlight improvements. We got a grant award, and then we're speed limit reductions around schools and traffic calming projects, and we'll continue to do that as well. So next steps, we'll develop our Vision Zero task force and engagement strategy. We're going to complete our comprehensive safety action plan in 18 to 24 months by September 2025 in anticipation of applying for implementation funding. We are going to apply for Downtown PED Phase 2 improvement funding at the end of the year. We're going to complete designs and move forward with construction of multiple signalized intersections, continue to develop and implement improvements around schools, and complete the installation of the RRBs we have not completed yet. Thank you.
Mr. Driscoll, this commission has had the opportunity to express its thanks and gratitude with some frequency for our colleagues on staff, Ms. Godwin and Mr. Shoemaker. But I dare say you are outshining and outperforming the team tonight. Holy moly, coming through with this report. I mean, truly, I imagine that many of the members, if not all of the commission, are deeply grateful to hear about the work that you've been engaged in on behalf of the Vision Zero program and the team. I especially appreciate this attention to our school zones. I think I saw 33 different school zones that have received improvements. Deeply grateful to see that. Love seeing the integration of the art into some improvements downtown. Looking forward to seeing that expanded. I do have a question. Year to date, I'm just curious, year to date, from the start of this year to today, do we happen to know where we are in bike pedestrian fatalities compared to last year or around this time?
Last year was 59 total. This year we're at 24. I know PEDs this year we're at 8. Last year, I don't want to tell you these numbers wrong. I think last year we were at 6. Let me double check and I can get back, but it's around the same. And
Could you repeat those numbers again? You said 59.
So 59 total last year.
Total?
Yes.
Okay. And then
24 total this year thus far.
Okay. Well, it's, and
I believe we had, I don't want to tell you wrong. I'll follow up.
Well, on the whole, that's certainly an improvement. I mean, we're trending in the right direction, and I think, again, in large part, many thanks to you and our colleagues on staff for all
Yeah.
of your work and your dedication.
What does stick out is the pedestrian fatalities we've had this year have all been on Capitol.
All on Capitol.
Let's see.
I think.
Half are on Capitol, so
Half-
4 have been on Capitol.
Yeah.
So that's and
But still.
specifically around that Capitol Calvary intersection. So that's why
Yeah.
we're focusing on that.
Half on Capitol.
And Capitol just as a whole in general. There's lots of people that walk the corridor. There's lots of transit stops. There's lots of people that use transits. There's community centers. There's decent connectivity on sidewalk out there from like Green Road to New Hope and Capitol. So there's lots of active pedestrians. So that's, we're focusing on that area to try to bring more improvements to those intersections.
Well, thank you, Mr. Driscoll. I would like to open up for the commission. Mr. Caruso?
Yeah, so as Mr. Neptune alluded to, I just wanted to say thank you for everything that you've done personally, along with, I know that there's a big team in city staff that we interface with, and I would just say that even those that aren't kind of directly working on Vision Zero specifically, I think virtually everybody to a person in the transportation department that we work with has kind of taken up the Vision Zero program and integrated it into what they're doing, and finding ways where they can take their normal jobs, if it's sidewalks or if it's road paintings or whatever, and has kind of figured out a way to integrate that into this program, and doing so kind of with no additional expenditures, using the money that we're already allocating and just kind of spending it more wisely. So that being said, I did want to ask some specific questions about the Calvary intersection. I unfortunately know that intersection very well, and it has been, and frankly continues to be, a very dangerous intersection and a very uncomfortable intersection. I wanted to ask about, you mentioned, so I know that there were some recent, the recent flexi posts were put out for kind of tightening the turning radii, which should help quite a bit. But I wanted to kind of get some more specifics on kind of what the next phase of improvements that you were kind of alluding to. I know one of them, or I know currently, I think one of the biggest issues that I see that still remains is that there's the turning movements from Calvary are not protected, and with as large as that intersection is, it's very common for drivers to kind of floor it from one side and be moving quite quickly by the time they reach the other side to make the turn. So are we going to make that a protected movement, or what is that going to look like? And kind of beyond that, what are those kind of additional enhancements that you were kind of referring to?
Sure. So I'm just going to read over them again. So we're going to relocate the existing transit stops closer to the intersection. Transit riders are, they're just a piece of a larger problem out there, but those stops are a little too far from the intersection. We're seeing people not go to the signalized intersection to cross, so we want to give them a more convenient opportunity to use the crosswalks. The upgrades to the signal design to make it more pedestrian friendly is a good observation on your point. That Calvary onto Capitol left turning movement will be protected, so that's like one of the things we want to do. Realigning and shortening the PED crosswalks will be done through the use of flexible delineators. So what's out there now will not be the final look of that intersection, because those transit stops do need to be moved. The one on the northeast corner that goes northbound will be moved a little bit south. The one that's on the southwest corner in front of the Volvo dealership is going to be a near side stop. So we're going to move it to the other side of the intersection, and that's going to require a queue jump for the transit bus to get through the intersection. One of the reasons we want to do that is there's also a line, I can't recall the number, that goes down Calvary as well. the ridership is super high on those stops, as well as the 2 stops right there at the intersection. So having it on that side of the road also eliminates us one of those crossings for the pedestrian. Adding reflective back plates for all the signals should help, should bring more visibility to the signal heads. There are already median refuges there, but we want to make them a little bit larger. And when we tighten the radius, we're going to have to move, we're moving all the crosswalks. So all the crosswalks will be repainted, which means those refuges need to come out closer to the intersection. So overall, we want to make that polygon smaller. It should be a square, but smaller to make it tighter. We installed LPIs already, so that was the leading pedestrian intervals, and then we've installed shoebox lighting around the intersection, but the corridor lighting we're moving forward with Duke should help light up from the Lewisburg split to Millbrook. So to answer your question though, Ramey Kemp is doing a design for all that, which we hope to be completed in the next probably like 3 or 4 months. We will then take that design and cost estimate and apply for funding, likely through spot safety with NCDOT. It's their corridor, but we're going to work on that together. The city does want to move the stop sooner than later, though. So the goal is to get that design completed, and then I don't know what avenue we're going to go through, whether it's a contractor, street maintenance, or whatnot, but we do want to relocate those stops. And then we will move forward with the rest of the improvements as funding becomes available.
Okay, thank you. So, and I did have kind of another, to that point, kind of another question or I guess comment as well, as far as funding. Is there, I know that you mentioned that we're planning after the action plan is kind of created in the next 18, 24 months, and then the plan is for the city to put in a grant request for up to $30 million for federal funding.
Yes.
But so beyond that grant funding, and I know you mentioned the spot awards from NCDOT, or is there any kind of additional funding that is available to the city from DOT, or is it really, is kind of spot funding the only funding mechanism that we have to get money from NCDOT?
Yeah, so the spot safety funding, it's kind of 2 buckets. It's like a state bucket and a federal bucket. There are caps on what the size of those projects can be and how much we can ask for. It's $400,000 for the spot safety. The larger federal projects, we either have to go through the LAP process or one of the other grant processes to get more money for projects. We do have our internal budgets as well. Jed gets money for signalized intersection improvements. I get a small amount for improvements as I see fit, trying to spread those across as much as possible. But we tag team with NCDOT in these grants because it's like a force multiplier with our dollars. They'll fund 80% of it. We only have to contribute 20. So we use our money, as needed, but we also try to utilize as much of it as we can to try to get more money from the state or federal government.
Right. Yeah, I mean, so like we mentioned before, I mean, I think that the city staff has been doing, a great job and is really, and, as your presentation shows, there's kind of a list a mile long of projects, and it seems like whenever we hear about these projects, kind of one of the major implementation kind of limiting factors tends to be, funding these projects. Even whenever we do, these more tactical projects that are lower cost, small projects add up, and whenever you have kind of a nearly infinite list of projects, the money spends pretty quick. So, I mean, I would just, I guess, make a comment that I feel that, while it's certainly, while I feel that city staff is certainly kind of doing a good job getting the funding that is available to us, I do feel that, as you mentioned, that last year NCDOT provided $2.45 million to the second largest city in our state at a time where nearly 60 people died, and when NCDOT has a budget of nearly $5 billion, spending less than $2.5 million, I think is pretty shameful, to be blunt. But I hope that we can continue to advocate for a larger pot of money that goes to these projects instead of where they're currently being spent.
For sure. And I would say that we feel the responsibility to apply for many projects as we can through those sources. So we're actively putting projects together and cost estimates that are competitive so we can try to get as much of a piece of that pie
Sure.
as we can.
Yeah, and just to be 100% clear, I believe that the city staff is doing what they can do, and in fact, going above and beyond. It is really, unfortunately, a structural issue that there's only so much that we can squeeze out of that very small
Sure.
pie. So,
Sure. And because of that, we have to focus on priority.
Right.
And where there are intersections that are having crash trends, we have to focus on those first. We want to focus on our historically disadvantaged communities first. So, as we make a larger and larger impact with years to come, hopefully we can spread out more and more.
Thank you, Mr. Caruso. Ms. Alley?
On the funding piece, I'd suggest that maybe this is a place for our advocacy around a future transportation bond to see a substantial, there's only so much we can do to move the needle in NCDOT funding, although I certainly agree with you. Maybe we can push, I think especially now that we have a program and an achievable, kind of actionable thing to rally around instead of it being these discrete kind of unfortunate incidents. I think that this is a good political time for us to advocate for that. And then I had a kind of in the weeds question for you about Capitol. A couple years ago, there was a fatality at New Hope Millbrook Capitol that a couple of us were involved in advocacy around. And one of the challenges was around lengthening the crossing time, the PED crossing time, and what it was going to do to traffic congestion.
Yeah.
And so I heard you say, and I was so happy to hear that we're getting LPIs across an NCDOT street, correct?
Correct.
I was wondering what that does. Have they been willing to concede more time to pedestrians because of these fatalities, or what has changed, and is there even more possibility in here for not just the LPI, but getting enough time to cross the street?
Yeah. So PED timing is dependent upon the intersection, the size of the intersection. For the larger movement, like the Capitol, say Capitol Calvary, for example, the Capitol movement, we do our best to try to have PED time in there that meets the minimum green time for that. And at a lot of intersections, we can achieve that. So that helps kind of proactively address the issue with not pushing the push button, or at least giving you enough time to get across Calvary. It's significantly harder in the other direction. It's much harder to give Calgary enough time every time to get the PED across without massively impacting traffic flow on Calvary. So in order to get that time, if you're crossing a Capitol, it's very important to hit the push button because you're going to get that extra time that you need to cross. So, I mean, there is very little flexibility to add, timing for PEDs, a second or two here or there, but I think, again, it comes down to, you got to hit the push button if you want to get across.
I mean, as somebody that's done this for a long time, I feel kind of ashamed to admit how recently it was I understood the importance of pushing the button, right? Because you still get the green light. So it's like, what does it matter if the little guy is lit up? But it does matter very much, and it seems like that could be an important educational campaign of dude, this is already the worst road to cross. Don't make it harder on yourself. Push the button. So maybe that could even be in coordination with our folks in transit, reaching out to folks that we know are walking about why it's important to push the pet button.
I mean, I think that's a really good example. It's something we're aware of that we want to continue to advocate as part of our SS4A awareness initiatives and educational opportunities
Nobody
that we
pushes
have.
it in front of Con.
Just to try to get people to do that. Because again, you might have enough time on the main movement with the green if you don't push it, but you do not have enough time on the side streets.
No.
I'm just going to jump in here and say, Mr. Driscoll, if you guys have a miniature, what we call a bag button, I'd be happy to put it on my pop-up traffic garden.
Oh, that'd be great. I'd love to. I could teach some kids. I'll be the one
Not
person
just kids.
stop. Yeah, the grown-ups too.
It's a serious issue about education.
So something that I failed to mention at that St. Mary's, Glenwood, and we've done this at many schools and we'll continue to do that, is we just implement PED recall for carpool hours, AM and PM. So PED recalls, the PED phase comes up every time, which does have impacts on traffic for that period, but you're not relying upon students or anyone pushing the button. You get the PED call every time. So that's, I think we feel like that's an important improvement at schools to not.
That seems like it should be like, just
Yeah.
automatic at least main entrances to schools.
You're considering that for all schools? School zones?
No, not for all schools, because we have to be cognizant of the impacts that it can have on the main streets or main movements. But where we can, we want to implement that so the kids aren't relying upon pressing the button.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Because it isn't just children.
Yeah, true.
It's remarkable.
Very much true. Yeah.
It is remarkable,
Yeah.
and it because we've been educated that we can only walk when the little man is lit. It builds tension for pedestrians when the light doesn't come on.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I see it happen throughout Raleigh, so I'm concerned about that, and I think it should be almost automated, and we should really start to double down on understanding what our priority is.
Are the LPIs, do they have to be actuated or are they automatic?
They have to be actuated.
Okay, so then it's even more important there that.
Very much.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think that's great. I'm so glad to hear that NCDOT has been open to those LPIs.
For sure.
That's a huge
Yeah,
improvement.
we want to advocate hard to get people to do this, because it's frustrating for us, like when we put a Hawk or RFB out there and no one's pressing the button. Like, we want to give you the tools for
Yeah.
success. Like, please use the tools
Right.
correctly, and that will give you the best opportunity to cross the street. So we hate to see people not use the buttons. We want to encourage as many as possible to navigate the intersection correctly.
Yeah, and I can understand where there are tensions with really high traffic volume and having it automated. It would be too high of a hurdle today. Hopefully not in the future, but it's in front of schools where you just know that there's going to be traffic at ped traffic at certain times, then that makes sense for it to be automated. Well, that's great. I hope we'll continue that trend. I can think of lots of intersections with high turn movement where those LPIs on NCDOT streets would be super helpful.
Ms. Alley, your comment about the transportation bond reminded me that our city of Raleigh is currently in the midst of hosting listening sessions with regard to our upcoming budget for fiscal year 25. And for the good of the commission and for those in the audience, I wanted to share just briefly those dates that we're in the midst of right now, where there's, again, opportunity to participate in sharing your input, your thoughts, your ideas, your, let's say, priorities for our growing community with city staff from the Office of Budget and Management. And specifically, there are upcoming dates, including tomorrow, Tuesday, October 17th, 6 to 7:30 in District D at Carolina Pines Community Center. On Thursday, October 19th, 6 to 7:30, District E at the Glen Eden Park Community Center. And then on Tuesday, October 24th, from 6 to 7:30, and this is a fun one, at Trophy Brewing on Morgan Street. There's also a series of virtual sessions, but I imagine those can be found, because there's so many of those can be found online, most likely at the City of Raleigh's Budget and Management Services website. But certainly, again, I share this in light of your comment with regard to our engagement with the transportation bond, but there's also a present-day opportunity to share thoughts and feedback with regard to our city's budget. And so hopefully everyone on the commission and those in attendance tonight feel, and those who might be watching the video feed, feel encouraged to participate. Any further comment from the commission? Oh, what, Ms. Clark?
Yes, I wanted to share with you what might be sort of a heads up, but in the Parks Department, the Greenway staff has begun looking at the, if you look at a Greenway map, it looks like a yellow brick road, that it's all one continuous Greenway. And of course, those who use it know that it is broken up with streets and sidewalk usage, et cetera. And so the city has undertaken with GIS's help to map where all of those gaps are and to identify them. And so it seems like and the goal is to mark the greenway as a sidewalk or a bike lane or whatever it is, so that people can have better connectivity. It seems like when we do that, we will increase usage of parts of the greenway that don't currently look like parts of the greenway. One of the intersections, for instance, that comes to mind for me is the intersection at Six Forks and Newton Road. And the East Fork Mine Creek Greenway crosses there. I'm not sure that there's an LPI or not there, but there's a lot of right turns off of Newton, and there's a left turn going on to Newton off of Six Forks. And so I just want you to have that knowledge to be planning accordingly for that, because I think it will change some of our greenway usage. The other one I have is a more personal question, and that is, have you all looked at activating the signal on Wade Avenue there across from CQ? I live over in the Village District, and the number of accidents and times that the lights are hit, there haven't been any pedestrian deaths that I'm aware of there, but there is a high, that a lot of people walk their dog there, and there are a lot of accidents on that. And it would be so much simpler if that traffic light were activated without having to push the button.
Okay. Yeah, I can't speak to the details of that, but what was the intersection again? Wade, and
well, and that's the whole point. There's not it's the Occidental Building and the State Employees Credit Union there. Right at the
top of the
hill.
blind hill and the curve.
Road bends.
Yeah, that's where
goes
that turn.
down. It is
And,
dangerous.
It's a roller
it's right
coaster.
up
Knuckles
from
Park,
Daniel
where there's so much
Street
distance.
and Wade Avenue. But there is a traffic light that's push button activated.
really like to
It would
drive.
make getting out of Daniel Street a lot easier if that light were activated, and it would slow people, because what happens is they come over the hill and they come around a curve and they crash right into that. It happens at least every 2 months.
So without knowing all the details, that is a pedestrian signal, so it has to be push button. I think there are larger plans to look at signalization in that area. We can follow up. I think there was a pre-pandemic project, but I haven't had any updates on it. So we can follow up, but what we're talking about is a pedestrian signal, so that's not exactly the same. We can't really put that on a timing, but we can follow up with more information.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Shoemaker. Commission, any further thoughts, questions? I see Mr. Caruso.
Yeah, I just had a follow-up question about the flexi post for kind of squaring off the intersections. And obviously we talked about Calvary, but are there other intersections that are identified for that type of treatment? I mean, I know that I've seen kind of a handful sprinkled around the city kind of pop up. I know there's one on like Dixie Forest by Millbrook High School that popped up last year, and I think those treatments are effectively free. I mean, they cost virtually nothing, and they really make a big difference with speed and turning movement. So, in the funding constrained environment, if we can get more of those installed, I think that would be very beneficial ROI.
Yeah, so they are popping up more and more around the city as we're using it as a tactful improvement. So Jones and McDowell and Davie and McDowell are getting some. Capitol and Calvary, as you mentioned. Hargett at Salisbury just got some. You're right, they don't cost a lot, but honestly, they're a little bit of a maintenance headache. They get hit a lot. Sometimes they don't take the hit very well. Maintenance is frequently out there addressing them. So I think we want to be pretty tactful with where they're going now. But as we, build up staff and build up capacity, then maybe that's something we could implement more and more. And as larger projects come through too, there might be like curb bump outs, or those are obviously more expensive, could have stormwater impact. So there's other municipalities around the city that fill in kind of that gapped area with MMA or thermoplastic or art like we did downtown. That creates a much better visual than just having kind of a voided area. The delineators create a little bit of a narrowing effect, causing people to slow down too. But honestly, if not daily, at least weekly, we're having to go around to multiple locations to fix delineators that haven't got run over or hit.
Yeah, I was kind of as a follow-up to that, I am kind of curious, like how city staff kind of thinks about the maintenance issue and kind of longer-term improvements. I mean, because as you mentioned, these treatments get run over quite frequently, and I mean, unfortunately, I wouldn't be surprised if the treatments at Capitol haven't been run over a few times already. And I think that obviously indicates the strong need for these treatments,
Sure.
right? So, it's just interested to hear like how the city kind of think. I mean, obviously, they're going to cost a lot more money if we do kind of a full curb extension or some other treatment like that. But, is there any type of, process around that of like, or just kind of understand the general thoughts around like how we kind of transition these pseudo temporary treatments into a more hardened solution that ideally won't continue to get mowed down?
Yeah, so with that comes the cost associated to do that. And I think, the locations we picked are areas where we're having right turn compliance issues, where pedestrians have gotten hit, or they're speeding. So I can't speak specifically really to like maintenance details. Street maintenance already handles a lot, and we don't want to overburden them with what they already have to maintain. But we work with Rebecca Duffy and our signage and pavement marking engineer, and she also manages part of that process and the maintenance of them too, with her sign and pavement marking shop to keep those up.
Thank you, Mr. Driscoll. Mr. Rotenberry?
Thank you. A couple of questions and I'll be done. First question is that you mentioned Safe Streets and Roads for All. That is a grant program that has gotten a remarkable amount of success in awardees here in North Carolina. And I've seen you on the calls that UNC does regarding the peer communities around. I guess my question, though, is related to that and thinking about, Raleigh is not an island. It connects to many other jurisdictions surrounding them, including, several that have been awarded Safe Streets and Roads for All grant funding or have a Vision Zero program of their own. And I'm curious to know what kind of collaboration is going on there. So, I mean, you're responsible for the safety and welfare of people that are, on our roadways here, and then your responsibility leaves once they've departed those invisible lines. However, it seems to me that there is a possibility of collaboration, and I'm wondering, how much, if any, collaboration is going on with, say, Nightdale, who has a Vision Zero program. Durham, actually the whole Durham, Chapel Hill, Carborough MPO applied for Safe Streets and Roads for All funding, so their whole area is covered by that. So I'm kind of curious, are you working with the MPO Campo? You know, I want to know more about collaboration that's going on here.
Yes, the collaboration has started, really, as those municipalities have developed their Vision Zero programs, like us, within the last year, and as they've gotten their action plan funded and are slowly moving to getting a consultant on board. I'm sure more collaboration will take place, but I mean, honestly, it's minimal thus far. Like you said, I'm responsible for Raleigh and the people that are within the Raleigh limits, but as we move forward with our action plan, there has to be collaboration with other municipalities, their stakeholders as well. So, we would like them to be part of our review and the recommendations we're making. And in a perfect world, all these recommendations between all municipalities would be somewhat aligned for a future goal. We have met with Durham, we have met with Nightdale in some meetings. Right now, it's kind of helping each other get your action plan up and running. But I'm hoping for more collaboration in the future.
I'm curious to know, and I know this is a process that hasn't begun, so this is more of a hypothetical, and I apologize for that. But I'm curious to know what you anticipate, like, the steering committee to be for the grant as you move forward with it. I'm hoping, for example, to include Campo, as a partner potentially, or someone from this committee potentially. I'm not volunteering. Or, someone from NCDOT, either through integrated mobility or, the Division 5, something like that. I'm curious to know, have you thought that far ahead in terms of, who's going to shepherd this plan from cradle to grave?
So are you talking about the task force, or are you talking about stakeholders as part of the plan?
For the Safe Streets and Roads for All, I assume you're gonna have a steering committee for that.
I mean, we received letters of support from ITRI, Wake County Public Schools, NC State, police commissioner, fire commissioner. So those stakeholders will continue to be engaged during review periods. But past that, I haven't really thought much farther to it.
Okay.
So it sounds like there isn't necessarily a formal steering committee or body involved.
Not at the moment.
And I wanted to also bring to your attention that the city was awarded a grant from NCDOT for an update on the bicycle and pedestrian plan. And so I think these at least will be in some part be concurrent planning processes.
Sure.
I think that is some potential for collaboration, both between the consultants that are hired for that particular plan and whomever will be hired for the Safe Streets and Roads for All.
Yes, 100%, absolutely. And if you look at the RFQ that I'm developing, there's like 7 or 8 plans on there that are either in the works or completed. So we want to make sure our comprehensive safety action plan doesn't contradict anything within those plans, but either supports those plans or further expands upon those plans. So yes, the consultant that will be awarded will be very aware that there needs to be collaboration with other plans and likely other consultants simultaneously as other plans are being developed to ensure there aren't any contradictions within the city for the goals we're trying to achieve in certain locations.
All right, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rotenberry. Mr. Driscoll, Ms. Gellenbeck.
Thank you. Congratulations on that very impressive list.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for all of it. I wanted to ask about the point that you made about speed limits in school zones, and can you expand on that conversation, please?
Sure. So the difference between a school zone and a school area, we have 2 sets of standard details that are very similar to NCDOT standard details of what school signage and pavement markings and crosswalks need to look at. at a school, the distances between signage and pavement markings, specific details like that. Standards that I can provide to you guys. School zones are anywhere where the posted speed is basically above 25. School zone is a process of reducing the speed limit by 10 miles per hour to a 35 or to a 25. The school areas are where the posted speed limit is already 25, so there's not a need to lower it. So that signage is a little bit different. Will and I are very actively moving forward with lowering as many speed limits as we can around schools. And we've started with the ones that are within neighborhoods, because those are probably where we're going to have the most success, going from like a 35 to a 25. I also don't want to go out and put in a bunch of school zone signage and then Will lowers it and then I have to redo all the signage. So we're focusing around schools, lowering speed limits, kind of neighborhoods first, and then we'll kind of expand from there in other locations. Reducing speed limits is one thing to do it, and you do get a little, some compliance with that regardless, but in order to successfully lower speed limits, you have to make it feel uncomfortable for the driver to drive at the speed. So if I'm going to lower from a 45 to 35, I got to also be doing something in the roadway that's going to incentivize you or force you to drive at a lower speed. If I just change it kind of obscurely, again, some people will follow it, but some people will still drive over the speed limit. So I'm very much an advocate. If we're going to lower speeds, we also need to make at least some tweaks to the roadway to ensure that that speed is compliant, the new speed is compliant.
Yeah, I agree. Six Forks is a great example of that. I attended Green Elementary School's walk and roll to school day, and I was able to listen to some of the PTA parents, and last spring they did a letter campaign which resulted in getting a traffic guard person. Crossing guard, that's the person. As well as they do have a pedestrian crosswalk that leads right to the school. But they also pointed out that the school zone sign is for northbound traffic is after the crosswalk, that the activated pedestrian crosswalk. So there isn't a sign prior to that as you're entering that zone.
Okay.
And it's very difficult to recognize that you've entered a space, even if you do have a sign up there. So
Okay.
I really approve of
Which school
your
is that?
It's Green Magnet Elementary School on Six Forks.
Okay.
Which is just south of Millbrook.
Okay. We have not completed standardizing all the schools. It's going to take a couple years, but I can follow up to make sure, or to see where we are on that one and make sure that we have correct signage for that crossing too.
Great. Another thing that they pointed out was that the time to cross was only 15 seconds, which is, it is a 5-lane stretch of space where people who sometimes are only about 3.5 feet tall, I think. So, meaning their legs are very short. We don't want to encourage children to run on this section. So I don't know if that's available, but I think increasing the crossing time would be ideal for those guys. And so Brookside is a great example for a road that runs along Conn Elementary. It's currently at 35 miles per hour, which is too fast.
I think it went down to 30 maybe.
You think it's at 30 now?
It's not at 25, but I think it did go down a little bit.
It's a hot spot of conversation at currently. And are those the kind of neighborhood streets that you'll be able to potentially lower to 25 miles per hour?
Yeah, I think there's some decent volume on Brookside compared to some other neighborhood streets I kind of had in mind that are truly schools like tucked back in neighborhoods. But yeah, I believe we lowered that to 30 recently. So
Okay.
a speed evaluation was done, and that was a recommendation. So if it was lowered past that, then again, we'd have to have some sort of infrastructure in the road that would warrant a slower speed.
Bikeway?
Well, it's a very good point that they bring up, because there's a contention between on-street parking and the bike lane, how much space is available. If you want cyclists to share the road with motor vehicle traffic, the speed really should be about 25 miles per hour. Because anything above that, the perception of danger, injuries is there, and perception speaks much louder than data-driven results as far as influencing whether you're going to get the public to choose active transportation or not. And that's really the ultimate goal that I know the Sustainability Division is moving towards, reducing those single-occupied motor vehicles. And so, so I think about that all the time, and I'm really excited to hear your strategy for lowering speeds, particularly how you're going to approach it, because you can't do it by twinkling your nose and have it overnight. I was really excited when I heard you say the word raised crosswalks. This is something that I think is really strategic in bringing awareness of the space for drivers, but also for reducing speeds. Can you expand on that conversation?
Yeah, raised crosswalks are great. There's no mechanical infrastructure involved. There's nothing on that end to maintain. You're not having to rely upon the individual to hit a push button. For Hawks, I mean, you do have a stop bar, but for RFBs, it's still a yielding situation, so there can still be a little bit of confusion regarding whether if it's safe to cross. If it's flashing, you're still not sure if the vehicle approaching you is going to stop. With raised crosswalks, it's going to force vehicles to slow down, to go over it. It's going to bring more attention to the pedestrian, but kind of most importantly for me is if there is a pedestrian crash, it's going to happen at a slower speed because of that raised crosswalk. So that is, I think, the biggest win for me. Of course, I don't want anyone to get hit, but if it can be at the slowest speed possible, then that would be best.
And so what is the probability of raised crosswalks actually being implemented? Is there barriers or conditions that it won't be?
No, I don't think so. It's a matter of acquiring the funding. We've vetted these ideas and locations through fire, and they've given us some criteria to work within, and we've worked with street maintenance to make sure there aren't going to be repercussions or things we need to keep in mind as we choose these locations. Many of them are on city streets. I don't think NCDOT allows it, but there are a couple locations that we're going to work with them to see if it maybe makes sense. I don't see any internal roadblocks or anything like that. I think it's a matter of kind of just like getting the funding so we can go do it. Mm-hmm. I think we have a lot of support. I know Tansy specifically told us she wants one on Wilmington at OEP. That's a great location for it. I don't want to dive into details, but that crosswalk isn't aligned properly, and moving those ramps is actually almost impossible with what's underneath the ground there with private utilities and whatnot. So that's an excellent space for a raised crosswalk with the volumes of pedestrians we have at that location, bringing more visibility to them. So that location and then a number of others, again, as part of the Downtown PED Phase 2 is what we're going to pursue. So hopefully, at the end of the year, we're going to apply for federal funding to try to get that project funded, but that project, as well as some other ones we've developed, might need to be broken out into phases, into more, how do I put it, awardable amounts instead of $1.5 million type of thing. If we can break it up into smaller amounts, we might be more likely to get funded. And so there might be a phased approach to more of the improvements downtown and really at other locations as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the costs for maintaining them and for them working 24/7
Yeah.
So even in times of weather conditions, they're still operating.
Sure.
Whereas ones that require electricity. So I'm a big proponent for that. In the same vein as a roundabout works 24/7. If no power is needed for that to reduce traffic speeds as well as bring awareness of the driver of the area that they're traveling through. So that's great. It sounds like those raised crosswalks are going to be concentrated downtown. Is there potential for those to expand outside of downtown center?
Yeah, I'm sure there was always potential for that. We haven't specifically identified locations, but there's a number downtown that make like the most sense at the moment that are quite obvious. And as part of that phase 2, with trying to get money for Hawks and RFBs at other locations, that's where we want to, I guess, pilot it and try it first. And if we have success, then I'm sure that I think that's something that we try to implement in other locations because, like you said, it's always up and running.
Yeah. Is it something that could be used at school zones?
It's not in our standard details at the moment, but again, I mean, we can evaluate locations on a place by place basis to see what makes the most sense.
Cool. One more thing that I just wanted to kind of explore, and that is traffic calming features when an intersection has been converted into a four-way stop. This seems to be a strategy that people are using, cities are using to reduce traffic speeds. But we know that stop signs don't necessarily reproduce the driver's change of behavior. Many times they'll cruise right through the stop sign. Sometimes they'll slow down. At these stop signs, at these intersections that become new four-way stops, is it possible for each of them to also receive high visibility crosswalks to increase an awareness of this change in this intersection for drivers?
So I can speak to that. The first thing that we have to look is are there ramps, are there sidewalks, and are they ADA accessible? So if the answer is no to any of those, then the answer is no, we cannot mark a crosswalk. Our standard operating procedure is to install advanced warning signs with red flags on all new stop signs, install the stop signs in each direction with bright side inserts where there are the reflectors to catch the view. We install the stop bars on all four approaches, and if there are ADA accessible ramps, we automatically put in the ladder crossbars. If it is in a school zone or in a higher pedestrian area, we will do the high-vis crosswalks. But the short answer is if there are ADA ramps, we automatically put in crosswalks with all new four-way stops.
Mm-hmm. Right. There is a new one, but it's just the parallel lines. I don't know if that's the proper name for them, but the high visibility is what I was referencing. That.
So we can look into that. Our standard operation has been with a stop control to put in the parallel lines, and then use the high vis at signals and at school crossings. But we can take this back with our signs and marking crew to see if we can update some of our standard operation procedures to see when we mark things.
Thank you so much for considering it. And last but not least, Sean, when you presented to BPAC, there was a proposal I pitched for collecting near-miss data. Is this something that your task force or your team has considered moving forward, or was that not a...
No. It's near-miss data is very location specific and requires some pretty significant software that costs money, that will need to be evaluated to try to implement improvements, to avoid something that could have happened. So as part of the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan, the consultant will help us evaluate a number of different traffic safety software that's out there on how we can be more productive with our program that could include some near miss software. I'm not sure yet, but with the capacity and resources we have now, we have to focus on locations that have a known issue based on crash data that we're seeing. So I think, so right now, no-ish, but once the program develops and we can start addressing more and more of these known locations, then we should, in the future have capacity to start evaluating certain locations where we're maybe getting feedback from someone saying, I almost got hit here a bunch, and then we can evaluate and then implement improvements before someone gets hurt. So I think that's more of a kind of a down the road thing once we've addressed all the data-driven known issues we have now.
Miss Alley, and just a moment before you proceed, I do want to acknowledge that Mr. Driscoll has been engaging with the commission for a near marathon session of about 60 to 70 minutes, and he's almost out of Coca-Cola. So if we could just be mindful as we proceed with our questions and engagement with Mr. Driscoll with regard to his time with us tonight. Miss Alley.
Last one, I promise, I think. Just a comment about the mid-block crossings downtown, which we're in favor of, and specifically that one by OEP. When this commission reviewed the BRT and the real premium for curb space and the substandard sizing of the sidewalks on that street, I think this presents an opportunity to think about, and I know that there'll be challenges with the height that you need the BRT stations at versus what you need for the raised crosswalks. But I think there's an opportunity to think of it instead of having a raised crosswalk and then a station next to each other, to think of them more holistically. There's a lot of real issues of cross slope, both for the road and the sidewalk, to think about almost doing like a plaza. So this is how City Plaza was designed, right? You go up onto it, there's no curb, go all the way through the plaza and you go down, and cars slow down when they go up, and the texture changes and everything. And I think this might be a place where, I know that would be a coordination challenge and a funding challenge, but I do think there's an opportunity here to address a future problem and a current problem with one project.
Yeah, we have briefly looked at that based on where the station's going to be. And we have to be, cognizant of the level boarding feature as it approaches that Wilmington and Hargett intersection. And it's a pretty massive articulated bus, of course. I think it's 60 feet. Yeah. So as we move forward with the design of that crosswalk and realigning it, which on the east side of the road, should come down a little bit. Hopefully that kind of overall, to your point, is an entire area which kind of forces people to slow down as well. But we don't want to have negative repercussions on the BRT, but also want to create facilities that increase accessibility to infrastructure like our transit.
Yeah, I just remember that behind the BRT station, and I know they're doing a slimline one there, that sidewalk is already really quite narrow, right? And you have businesses and business entrances behind there. So wondering if there's a way, even if the roadway height changes, that you could have more of a ped plaza that isn't just linear, that expands somewhat, even if it looks like a curb bump out that runs into the mid-block crossing, something like that.
Okay.
It's worth a look. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Miss Alley. Mr. Driscoll.
Yeah, I just, again,
I'm
thank
good
you
if
so
you have
much.
more questions.
Yeah, I like having Sean around.
Big fan.
Sincerely, thank you so much for all the work that you have led your team on. It's really impressive, and I'm excited by it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gallenbeck. Any further comment from the commission here at 7:41 with Mr. Driscoll? Hearing none, again, briefly, thank you, Mr. Driscoll, to you, your team, and of course, all the ways in which your work is integrated with the larger efforts of our city transportation staff. We deeply appreciate you.
Thank you. Thanks for the time.
Thank you.
Come back anytime.
Thank you.
Well, as we proceed, I'd like to acknowledge that our colleague and friend, Commissioner Tong, has joined us, and we now have quorum, and I believe that we may proceed to have our minutes approved. If assuming we've had a moment to review the minutes, do I hear a motion to approve?
I motion to approve.
And
Second.
I hear a second from Mr. Rotenberry. All in favor? Aye. Any objections? Hearing none, the minutes are approved from our previous session. Let us now proceed swiftly through our various reports. I'll kick us off with the chair's report. I did have the pleasure of attending an outreach committee meeting earlier this month with Mr. Thomas, Ms. Gallenbeck, and Ms. Godwin, and I will let Mr. Thomas speak more to that in a bit. That was a good conversation. Also attended, as I mentioned earlier, this morning, a Brookside Drive meeting with some neighbors and residents and our friends from Oaks and Spokes. I'm looking forward to tomorrow attending a West Street corridor engagement opportunity for various businesses that are active along West Street. That'll be hosted by Ms. Godwin, if I'm not mistaken, at Aja, hosting it at a business off the corridor. Looking forward to attending that opportunity.
Aja on West Street?
Well, Aja, West Street is a part of this larger effort to connect these downtown to Five Points, right? The sort of north-south connection.
Aja is in 5 Points.
It's in 5 Points, that's right. And so if you think of it, there's an opportunity to engage with the local business. This is...
What time is it?
It'll be at 3 o'clock, I believe. 3 o'clock? 3 o'clock?
Okay.
Yeah. Would love to see you there, Ms. Gallenbeck. Well, and I think that the only other comment I was going to make is that I am looking forward to also attending on the 24th of October a budget listening session with our friends at Trophy Brewing and the City of Raleigh budget and management team. Other than that, that will conclude the chair's report. Planning Committee?
We did not meet in September, and we currently have no pending items on our agenda.
Very nice. Thank you. Policy?
Yeah, we met 2 weeks ago, and we primarily discussed the one of the items in policy committee, the right-of-way obstruction and construction closures item. We had a pretty robust discussion with city staff about it, and should have a report out by our following commission meeting, but we'll have our recommendations then. And the other pending item, which we reviewed briefly, but we'll kind of work on in further detail and hopefully largely conclude this coming month, is the TC 321 policy and criteria development, which is effectively looking at ways to kind of improve the existing policy and procedures around behind the curb bike facilities on new or retrofitted avenue streets.
Thank you, Mr. Caruso. Outreach Committee.
Yes, Outreach Committee met on Thursday, the 12th, to begin an initial discussion on how best to balance incoming concerns and feedback from the public, along with staff's ongoing workload and city-approved work plans and budgets. We're trying to kind of acknowledge the effort, energy, and very valuable concerns of members of the public who bring these issues before this commission, and also respect the fact that this is a commission of volunteers serving in an advisory role to city council and to city staff. So it will be up to city staff to draft any policy or procedures that come out of this related to these concerns. But through the Outreach Committee, BPAC is providing input, again, in an advisory role. So.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Let us proceed with staff reports.
So I have one. So Kenneth Ritchie, who's in the audience still, has a scheduled presentation for City Council tomorrow on the Six Forks Road project and the update. So at this meeting, he's going to be requesting council give him some additional direction moving forward. Staff is recommending to council that they enter into a new round of public engagement starting the week of 10/23. Ultimately, council and their decisions will inform how we move forward. But as it exists today, that engagement period coincides with your upcoming planning committee meeting. If you would choose to refer to that, we would plan to have staff representatives, likely Kenneth, potentially the project manager, be there to talk through the options and hear feedback from you all. So from our perspective, it'd be our recommendation for you to nominate to move the Six Forks Road project discussion into your next planning committee meeting discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Shoemaker. Mr. Tong?
Yeah, we'd be happy to. Will you have information ready by the end of this month for that?
Who's doing the presentation?
Okay. Just making sure.
So the answer there is yes. We will be laying out some options for council tomorrow, really as information with some recommendations on how we can move forward through these next steps. Obviously, trying to be mindful of this project's been lingering out there, and we've got stakeholders along the corridor that are really kind of waiting to see what the direction is going to be. So obviously, we'll get more direction tomorrow afternoon from the council, but certainly we're anticipating that they're going to want some level of engagement with the community as we consider the options.
Thank you, Mr. Ritchie. Mr. Tong?
Sounds good to us. We can look forward to that.
Thank you. Back to staff?
Couple updates for me. First and foremost, have some exciting introductions to make to the newest member of our team. So just want to highlight Hannah DeSantos has joined us officially today. Today is her first day. She's our new active transportation planner in the Mobility Development Group. And she...
Please.
She will be overseeing our micromobility programs and helping as well with all active transportation projects. So.
Thank you, Ms. Godwin. And is it Dos Santos? Santos, yeah. Well, Mrs. Santos, if you would just take a moment, just a minute or two, to introduce yourself to the commission and to the city of Raleigh. We are so happy to have you on our active transportation team.
No, my name is Hannah DeSantos. I'm really happy to be here, really excited to be joining the team. I'm coming from Toronto, Canada. I've spent the past several years researching, doing national and international research on active transportation planning. So my recent research was looking in Latin America specifically, and looking how they've been expanding the cycling infrastructure there, contentious context as well. And so I'm looking forward to just advancing cyclability and walkability in the city, and it's been a lot of fun getting to know the department and just hearing all of you tonight, and I'm just looking forward to making Raleigh a more fun and safe place to bike and walk.
You'll love to hear it. You'll love to see it. Welcome. So good to have you.
I see why you were picked.
Yeah, so absolutely just super excited to have Hannah on board. She's already been impressing the socks off of everyone today.
Is today her first day?
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes. So really thrilled about that. And then secondly, just wanted to reinforce and highlight our Transportation and Treats event. The Transportation Department is hosting Friday, October 27th from 3 to 7, I believe, over at Chavis Park. So please come join us, bring your kids, families, or whoever to just kind of walk through and meet with staff and learn more about our different service units, and really just an opportunity to engage with the department. So that's all for me.
Thank you, Ms. Godwin. Was there a comment?
I thought we were going to get some more updates.
Well, it's been
signs, like no parking signs, and updates on trees in bike lanes and little things like that.
with our friends from Urban Forestry. It sounds like you're
I'm just
referring
saying,
to. Is there
I
maybe a
thought
30-second update from Forestry?
So staff did meet with Urban Forestry in regards to Ms. Gillenbeck's question about street trees on the West and Harrington corridors. At this time, they are continuing to grow in their development process. They're fairly young trees within the last couple of years have been planted. And due to the state that they're in the growth process, they cannot be trimmed at this time. So they will have to grow up out of the path of our bikes and peds who use that corridor. We did talk a little bit about, what type of options we have to continue to plant trees in our urban environment that could potentially not impact our bike and ped infrastructure. There are very limited options that our urban forestry team has in terms of tree selection that would be viable in that urban environment. And so definitely some more research and conversations that can be had about that, but that's the update at this time.
Barbara, was there an exploration in not necessarily cutting the limbs, but having them be lifted up, somehow pulled up so that they're not in the bike lanes? Because, it's hands down dangerous. They'll smack you. They're pushing you out to the side, if not into the road.
We did not ask that question specifically. Based on the conversation that we had, I could assume that that would also have a negative impact on the way that they grow, but certainly can't speak directly to that. That would be an urban forestry question that we can follow up on.
Okay, because I have been thinking about this, and I have to say that if those limbs were in the pedestrian walkway, it would not comply with ADA. They would be trimmed. If those limbs were hanging where motor vehicle traffic was being impacted, they'd be trimmed. So I'm just putting it out there that this motor traffic, has the same equal value as all those other areas of travel. And I just can't see how we just say, well, that's it. There isn't a solution. When this is a protected bicycle lane, that means there's bollards, there's parked cars, weaving in and out is not what we want. I know that.
Well, and Ms. Gellenbeck, I think that the commission appreciates, your continued encouragement with staff to explore some potential solutions to, what has become a persistent challenge for people who are just trying to transport themselves across our city. So perhaps, if nothing else, if Ms. Godwin, if you could engage our colleagues with urban forestry to see if there is some way to at least lift these branches up and out of the headspace of our cyclists, or frankly anybody who's kind of actively making use of our bike lanes. I think we've seen the scooters moving through. We've seen plenty of folks making use of these the bike lane infrastructure outside of cyclists. Again, it's a lane of active transportation, and so I think it would be appreciated, if I'm not mistaken, by the commission if you could continue to engage our friends with urban forestry, which we know their hands are full, with the maintenance of many trees across the cityscape. But it would be, again, appreciated by the commission hearing some, let's say, creative solutions identified or approaches at removing these branches, kind of lifting them up, finding a way to get them out of the headspace of folks trying to make their way across the city.
Sure, we would be happy to continue those discussions and we'll keep you engaged as that continues.
Thank you, Ms. Godwin.
Thank you. Hearing no further reports from staff, we will now transition at 7:55 to our general board comments. Any general board comments? See, Mr. Thomas.
Yeah, I just have one quick question. I've seen some progress on Hillsborough Street with the bike lane remarkings, and I just wonder if there's an update on the timeline for completing that.
So our contractor went out approximately 10 days ago to complete the restriping on the westbound approach of Hillsborough Street. The temperature on those days was too cold for the thermo that would be installed with that striping, and so they have not gone back out and finished that work. So we're going to hope for a few more warm days to peak in here before the end of the year to complete that work.
And that's just on the west side, our westbound side, and
correct.
They'll be updated on the eastbound side too at some point. Is that
right?
I'm
I'm sorry, I said the wrong thing. The westbound side is complete. It's
Okay.
the eastbound approach that we need to go back out and finish.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comment from the commission?
Ms. Godwin, I'm interested in knowing if there's been an update about the no parking signs for Whitaker Mill bike lanes?
So our parking division, members of our team went out on the corridor, and the signs that they installed along the corridor are there. So in terms of being able to actually enforce that no parking, the signage and the code is updated to reflect that.
So the signs have been installed in the area that there were no signs? There was a block where there was no signs, and that's really where the residents were parking, in the bike lane.
Can you elaborate on the block specifically?
Yeah, okay. If you are traveling eastbound on Whitaker Mill, where there's that traffic light, and I think it's Pine Drive, and then you're traveling eastbound, and the next road is?
Carson.
Thank you.
Carson, yeah. I know Carson.
As an alternate route, I mean, do you want to follow up with a map and email Barbara and myself, and we can have that in direct communication with the parking division, just so that we're not
Okay.
just hoping we get all the right things. We want to 100% get this right. So if you just want to follow up with a map and kind of circle the area, we can be 100% on that.
Sure. I think if my memory is serving me well, I have supplied a map in the past.
Well, and I guess to Barbara's point, the parking division felt like they went out and completed the work, and we feel like all the signs are there. But if a block was missed, maybe a work order was missed.
Sure, and I'm happy to
wanna get
look
this right.
myself as well
yeah.
to confirm. So
Again.
because I live in the neighborhood, so that's great. Thank you so much, Will. I appreciate that. And I just want to make a comment that as much as the data shows that our numbers are going down, there is definitely an increase in motor vehicle traffic in the Raleigh area. And as a consequence of it, I feel less likely to ride my bike or walk because of this overarching sense of speeding. And so Glenwood Avenue is I live nearby. The stretch between Five Points intersection and the St. Mary's intersection that was highlighted in Sean's presentation, where the middle schoolers were all gathering last week, another speeding driver lost control of their vehicle, ran into a utility pole, and the residents were out of power for hours. My house was out of power for 7 hours. And so there's definitely a direct cost for drivers who are losing control of their vehicles. If it's not the perceived threat of injury, I would much rather be in a vehicle that has 1,000-pound weight protecting me at this point. And in order, I just want to say it on record that speeding is increasing, driving is becoming more aggressive in Raleigh. I used to describe Raleigh as a big city with benefits delivered with small town charm. And the charm we're losing it as our population expands and new people are moving into the area. They don't know that residents are living on these roads that are considered state highways. And so I don't know where I'm going with this other than to just say I am changing, and I'm an advocate. I'm one of those you would consider confident riders, and I have now fallen into interested but concerned. And potentially I could even possibly drop into no way, no how if we don't dive deep into our commitment to managing driving behavior where we live and work in this city. And thank you for allowing me to stand on a soapbox and share my sentiments.
Thank you, Ms. Gellenbeck. Any further comment from the commission? Well, just before we proceed with our upcoming events, I do want to acknowledge, as we often do, we are living together in this growing, developing city. And I think that Ms. Gallenbeck's observation, I have to imagine, isn't singular. It isn't unique to Ms. Gallenbeck. In other words, if we have someone here at the commission table who has been a longtime advocate, longtime cyclist, and yet is finding herself feeling increasingly unsafe and not comfortable navigating her way across our city, I doubt that she's the only one. And so, though we certainly received some good news tonight from our colleagues with Vision Zero, Mr. Driscoll, and, we're seeing our active transportation team growing, in part, we know that there's still a lot of work to do. And I think, again, here we are at the table as volunteers engaged in advancing that work with our colleagues on staff, our colleagues with council, and our friends and families who reside across the city. So, plenty of work to be done. And speaking of which, as it relates to upcoming events, again, I will remind everyone that there are opportunities to share your priorities with regard to our fiscal year 25 City of Raleigh budget through a variety of listening sessions coming up on the 17th, 19th, and 24th of October in person, in addition to a whole host of virtual opportunities. I would just defer to the City of Raleigh's budget and management website to get those details. I'd also like to acknowledge that I think that Ms. Gallenbeck is hosting a traffic garden this comes Saturday. We're investing in our future cyclists and pedestrians and folks making their way actively across the city at the Poe Center for Health Education. I believe that, Ms. Gallenbeck, you may still be looking for volunteers to join you?
Yes, thank you so much for mentioning it. We are still looking for volunteers to help implement it, and that'll be between 11 and 12:30. The event itself is between 1 and 4 at their facility, which is essentially East Raleigh. It's a very family-friendly event. We're very excited about the Poe Center experimenting with the traffic garden as a youth traffic safety education course. So, yeah, we're thrilled, and if you guys could join us, that'd be awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Gallenbeck. And in addition to that particular family-friendly event, we have on Sunday, October 22nd, an opportunity to bike and treat with our friends from Oaks and Spokes at 1 o'clock. They will kick things off with a party at Oakwood Cemetery, spooky, followed by an all-ages ride at 2 o'clock. So again, an opportunity to bike and treat with our friends at Oaks and Spokes, kicking things off at 1 o'clock this coming Sunday, the 22nd at 1 at Oakwood Cemetery, followed by a ride at 2. And then I think, as Ms. Godwin mentioned, on the 27th of October, we have the Transportation and Treat event happening, And Ms. Godwin, could you remind us again of the time frame and the location of the event?
It'll be held at Chavis Park from 3 to 7, I believe.
Love that.
I just want to say I went when it was hosted at Moore Square, and it was a lot of fun to have that one-on-one with the City of Raleigh staff. So I highly recommend it. They are very excited to share what they're doing, and yeah, it was great. So.
Well, that sounds like a ringing endorsement for a good time with our City of Transportation staff. Last but not least, I'd like to mention that on October 28th, our friends at Dix Park will be hosting a Halloween movie night, a double feature movie night that you can walk or bike or make your way to however you see fit. That'll kick off at 6 o'clock. I think there's going to be a costume sort of parade with folks and lots of food trucks and activities, followed by the movies starting off at 7. Again, it's a double feature, with the first film being a very family-friendly, I think, screening of Casper, if I'm not mistaken.
What date?
This is on October 28th. So certainly would encourage folks to make their way. Any other upcoming events for the good of the commission and the good of our public? Well, gosh, hearing none, let us proceed with a confirmation of our next BPAC meeting. It appears to be on Monday, November 20th. Monday, November 20th is our next session. And with that, and no further comment from the commission is adjourned. Thank you.